Now, the Supreme Court just made the historic decision to allow gay marriage in America in all 50 states, and naturally, Justice Scalia is against it. He wrote a dissenting opinion in the case of Obergefell versus Hodges, and it was comical. Everybody was making fun of his decision the other day with what he said about Obamacare, how, we should change it from Obamacare to SCOTUS care, the name of it, and he tried to use words to make himself sound smarter than he is. And he also, said things that people didn't know what the fuck he was saying either. Like, he said something about applesauce yesterday in his decision, something about hickory pokery or something like that. He was just, you know what it is? He tries to be creative, but when you're a dumb person and you try to be creative, you just sound dumber, which is exactly what happened. So, he wrote a dissenting opinion. If you thought the one from the other day was scathing, this one was, it was that on steroids and human growth hormone, and you could tell that he's still bitter from that one, and he's super bitter about this one, and again, ironically, he thinks that he's the one that's standing up for morality, but he doesn't realize that his opinion here, 50 years down the road, 60 years down the road, people are going to look back at it as if it's a justice who wrote like a segregation opinion. It's just going to look mind-numbingly stupid and like you're drooling from your mouth and going, nyeh. So, with that being said, now that I've properly prepped this for you, here's some of Scalia's dissent. He said, quote, I join the Chief Justice's opinion in full. I write separately to call attention to this court's threat to American democracy. All right, let's pause already here. There's going to be a lot of pausing because there's a lot of ridiculousness. You're concerned about democracy? That's what he said. That's what he opened with. There's a threat to democracy coming from this court. Okay, do you know what democracy means? Democracy. So, one man, one vote, will of the people, that kind of thing. Is that what you're talking about? Well, why don't we take a look at a poll here and see how the American people feel about gay marriage? Oh, wow! 61% of them are for it. So if you really are in favor of democracy, Mr. Scalia, you would say, no, actually, rock and roll, 100% for it. Let's go. They ruled the right way because they're ruling with the democratic will of the people. He's saying this is a threat to democracy. No, a threat to democracy would be if 61% of people want gay marriage and we don't get gay marriage. That would be a threat to democracy because that would be the opposite of democracy. That would be the will of the people not being listened to. So, of course, he has his wires crossed. In the first sentence, he's already wrong. The first sentence. He says, but the court ends this debate in an opinion lacking even a thin veneer of law. I know, because whenever anybody disagrees with you, it must be that they're against the law. Buried beneath the mummeries, and straining to be memorable passages of the opinion is a candid and startling assertion. No matter what it was the people ratified, the 14th Amendment protects those rights that the judiciary, in its reasoned judgment, thinks the 14th Amendment ought to protect. Now, I know that sounds like a bunch of legal mumbo-jumbo and jargon, and that's because it is. That's because he doesn't even know what the fuck he's saying. But the idea is, what he's getting at is, well, I don't know why the court is trying to interpret this 14th Amendment. We know what the original intent of the 14th Amendment was. Why are they trying to interpret this? Because it's their fucking job to interpret it, you idiot! Notice, whenever it's convenient to his argument, he falls back on original intent. Original intent. Is this what the founders meant or is this what the people meant when they ratified the 14th Amendment? Is that what they meant? Did they mean gays? They didn't mean gays at the time, so fuck you. Yeah, but Scalia, you have to understand, man, what the decision was is a reasonable interpretation of the 14th Amendment based on the words themselves on the page. Do you understand that? So at the time, if the 14th Amendment, due process and equal protection, was only intended for African Americans, if that was the idea behind it, well, by reading the same words on the page, a reasonable person can ascertain that, well, this should apply to gays as well. So we can interpret it as applying to gays because it makes sense to do so. It is logical to do so. But his argument is, logic? Forget logic. What was the original intent? That's what I want to know. It's a profoundly silly way of looking at the Constitution, and by the way, he only uses this view when it's convenient for him. When it's inconvenient for him, he ignores that view completely. So let's keep that in mind. Then Scalia goes on to quote the majority opinion and mock it. He says, the nature of marriage is that through its enduring bond, two persons together can find other freedoms, such as expression, intimacy, and spirituality. Really? Whoever thought that intimacy and spirituality, whatever that means, were freedoms? And if intimacy is, one would think, freedom of intimacy is abridged rather than expanded by marriage. Ask the nearest hippie. What the fuck did you just say? So you get what he's doing there, right? He thinks he's pointing out some kind of liberal hypocrisy because he's saying, well, liberals are usually against marriage unless it's gay marriage. Ask the nearest hippie, because marriage takes away, like, intimate freedoms and sexual freedoms. But you jackass, even if somebody like myself, I'm a liberal who's personally against marriage, okay? So I'm the kind of guy that he's referring to here. But even myself, because I don't want to get married, that doesn't mean I want to take it away from other people. How does he not get that distinction? I'll tell you how he doesn't get that distinction. He's a simpleton. He's a simpleton. Everything is face value. He doesn't see any nuance whatsoever, and he doesn't even listen to the people who disagree with him. He just stereotypes them, caricatures them, and argues based off of a straw man. Set up a straw man, knock it the fuck down. That's Justice Antonin Scalia in a nutshell. Look at what he's like, ask the nearest hippie. I thought they don't like marriage, but apparently they like it when it's gay marriage. No, they like freedom to choose who's going to marry who and who's not going to marry. They just want freedom. They want choice. That's all they want. If you ask the nearest hippie, they'll tell you, if you're straight and you want to get straight married, go ahead. If you're gay, you want to get gay married, go ahead. If you don't want to get married, don't get married. That's what a hippie would say. And what fucking Supreme Court justice writes hippie in an opinion? Remember, Scalia is the guy who cloaks himself in, all I care about is constitutional principle. Oh, I just have a legal mind. That's it. My legal mind is too big for your feeble mind. So understand that these are high-minded arguments I'm making. And then meanwhile, in his argument, he's like, hippie! What's next? Pinko, commie, fag? Is that what you want to throw out there? Because you know that these are the thoughts that are really going on in his fucking head. You know that he's on the borderline of just fucking saying, and then Rush Limbaugh said in June of 1998, and I quote, gay marriage is wrong for this reason, and I agree with him. You gotta understand, Scalia at one point in the past literally quoted Rush Limbaugh during an Obamacare hearing. Now, he didn't actually say, and Rush Limbaugh said X, but he used the exact same argument. The exact same argument. Rush on his show said, well, if the government can tell you to buy health care, why wouldn't the government be able to tell you to buy broccoli? Do we really want a government that can tell us to buy broccoli? Cut to Scalia, used the exact same argument. He didn't even change the fucking food product. You would think he'd be smart enough to be like, I don't know, fucking cauliflower, liver, whatever, carrots. But he used the same fucking vegetable. Why? Because he's not smart. Am I being clear here? Now, he also goes on to bemoan the tone, which is fucking hilarious. Because look at your tone, calling people hippies and shit. You're a Supreme Court justice. The other side's tone is fucked up. Your tone is fucked up, you idiot. And by the way, let me be clear here. I have no problem with however harsh of a tone they want to have. Clearly, I have a harsh tone all the time. But he's the one that's making the argument. Your tone is wrong because it's too aggressive. Your tone is the most aggressive, arguably in Supreme Court history. Again, he's not able to turn his criticism inward because he's a fool. He says, quote, the opinion is couched in a style that is as pretentious as its content is egotistic. This is Justice Antonin fucking Scalia calling somebody else pretentious and egotistic. Oh my God, get a mirror, you fucking bloated jackass. He says the Supreme Court of the United States has descended from the disciplined legal reasoning of John Marshall and Joseph Story to the mystical aphorisms of the fortune cookie. Oh, I know, dude, I know. Anytime anybody disagrees with you on any issue regarding the legality or the constitutionality of a given subject, it must be that they just don't understand your superior reasoning. They're using fortune cookie cliches and platitudes. I know. It can't be that you're the one that has the worst argument. It can't be that they just disagree with you. No, it must be that they're so dumb that they have fortune cookie reasoning. Again, this is coming from the guy who once quoted Rush Limbaugh on the court. And you're going to talk about how other people haven't thought through the issues. He says, and to allow the policy question of same-sex marriage to be considered and resolved by a select, patrician, highly unrepresentative panel of 9 is to violate a principle even more fundamental than no taxation without representation. But what really astounds is the hubris reflected in today's judicial push. Okay. Let me be clear about this word here. Do I know how to pronounce it? No. You want to know why? Because normal people don't know how to pronounce that. That's why. You want to know who uses that word? Somebody who's trying to appear smarter than they are. That's who uses that word. You come up with a complex word, you use that word, and you think that the fact that you're using big words makes up for the fact that your philosophy is moronic. It doesn't. Your philosophy is still moronic, and you're overcompensating with a broad vocabulary, and one that doesn't even make sense. I know somebody who used to do that at my high school. They would use super complex words and then look at you like, oh, you don't know what I'm saying? Bitch, you just looked that shit up yesterday on online. Don't act like everybody's supposed to know what you're fucking talking about. You know nobody knows what you're talking about, and you're doing it to try to give yourself a false sense of superiority. But that's a side point, because look at the main argument he's making there. Again, it goes back to the oh, you're threatening democracy. This is judicial overreach is what it is. Wait. You want to talk about a judicial push. Okay, so a judicial, like, overthrow of the way the government's supposed to work. That's what you want to talk about? Where was the concern for that when your punk ass was ruling that money equals free speech, even though historically money does not equal free speech, and no matter what kind of interpretation of the Constitution you take, money doesn't equal free speech? Now, you weren't concerned about a judicial takeover, judicial overreach back then, but now you're concerned about it when we allow people who love each other to get married? Get the fuck out of here, son. We have a country where the people don't have their voice heard anymore in what's supposed to be a representative democracy. You want to know why that is? Because the Supreme Court said money equals free speech. That's why. So now the politicians are only listening to the donors and the billionaires and the lobbyists who pay them to run their campaigns. That's why there's always legislation that helps Walmart or ExxonMobil or you name the corporation, Wall Street, and there's not legislation that you like because they're not listening to you because they're getting paid by somebody else. And that's because of the Supreme Court with their judicial But back then he was on that side. He's like, rock and roll, let's do this judicial overthrow of the way the government functions. Why? Because it fits my political ideology. I'm in favor of oligarchy. I'm in favor of corruption. I'm in favor of bribery. I'm in favor of being part of the good old boys club and having them run everything. I love Wall Street. It fits my ideology, so yes, judicial overthrow. Treating people equally? No, we can't do that. That's crazy. What are you talking about? And again, it's a reasonable interpretation of the 14th Amendment to side with gay marriage. Of course it is. He's making it seem like that's unreasonable and that's a judicial takeover, but it's not a judicial takeover to stop us effectively from having a democracy because you ruled that money equals free speech and that's in the Constitution when it doesn't and it's not in the Constitution? What a joke of a human being you are. You don't understand that, Antonin Scalia. You don't get it. And you're not going to get it, again, because you're a silly person. And in conclusion, real fast, let me tell you this. Justice Antonin Scalia, he's notorious for his aura of condescension and arrogance and smugness. And the right loves him for that, because he has the same ideas that they do, and he looks down on people with it, and he pretends like he's this massive intellectual, when of course he's no such thing. Well, think about this for a second. Let this swirl around in your head. Let this marinate in your brain for a little bit. Mr. I know a lot of stuff and I'm better than you and I understand the Constitution and the principles. I'm so intelligent. That guy, Scalia, he's also the guy who, after lecturing people about the law and the Constitution, turns around and gives interviews with the media where he argues that we need to look out because the devil literally exists. The devil exists. And he's working in mysterious ways. He actually said, I think it was with New York Magazine, he said, oh, you know what's creepy? You know what's weird? What's weird is that back in the day, in like the biblical times, the devil was visible all over the place, and he was outwardly doing stuff, and people all knew about it. But today, it's weird because you don't actually physically see the devil. So the devil ends up working in mysterious ways. Like they'll work through people. Like they'll work through the liberals and through the gay activists, and he'll try to push his agenda that way. You don't actually see him anymore, which is weird. I mean, you saw him back in the day. I don't know why they don't see him now. Maybe because those are biblical myths That wasn't true. It's not verified. It's a bunch of idiots in the desert who were writing shit and talking out of their ass. And you don't see him today because he doesn't fucking exist. It's the devil. You're talking about the devil. This is a guy who makes decisions about your fucking life, about your life. Shit that affects you. It affects you. Whether it's social safety net programs, whether it's birth control, whether it's abortion, whether it's healthcare. This guy's making decisions about your life, all the while thinking he's better than you and more intellectual than you, while at the same time he's afraid about the devil literally existing and working his evil all around the world. What a pathetic human being he is.